Okay, let's talk about two issues. First, the concept of preemptive war, which under post-Nuremberg laws is defined as a criminal war of aggression, has become a centerpiece of American policy, and both parties, rather than debating the validity under international law of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, the occupation of these countries, debate the terms of the occupation. Why don't you begin, Mr. Nader?
Well, a preemptive war, unconstitutionally asserted, violates our federal statutes, international treaties that we belong to, and our Constitution. It's really quite remarkable that Congress, ever ready to abandon its constitutional responsibilities, shoves them over to the White House and basically says to George W. Bush, you decide when to invade Iraq. You decide how much attacks you're going to make on Afghanistan or Western Pakistan. What we're seeing here is a lawlessness that has become institutionalized. It's not just sporadic. It's tied up with this unitary president, the diminution of Congress, diminution of the judicial branch, and it basically strips the people of their sovereignty. And it looks like that Barack Obama, who's a constitutional law specialist, has not informed the American people about international law that circumscribes his belligerent parallelism with John McCain. Like they can go anywhere in the world, they can do anything in the world. We have far more to lose than those stateless terrorists. Far more to lose. And if we don't uphold the rule of law and international law and the Nuremberg principles, we're going to be much more vulnerable to stateless terrorists. We'll be, in effect, giving them the support of their community by invading, supporting dictators and oligarchs that suppress their own people and continually occupying territories like Iraq and portions of Afghanistan and maybe soon Iran, in terms of the belligerence that both Obama and McCain have demonstrated to a country that hasn't invaded anyone in 250 years.
Just so Mr. Baldwin has time, but a brief question, then do you support immediate withdrawal from Iraq and Afghanistan? Mr. Nader.
Pardon?
Just quickly, do you support immediate withdrawal from Iraq and Afghanistan?
Well, I support a 6-month negotiated withdrawal of all soldiers and corporate contractors from Iran, continued humanitarian aid. We owe moral obligation to a country that we've blown apart, that didn't threaten us, and UN-sponsored elections. In terms of Afghanistan, more U.S. soldiers like throwing fire on gasoline in that area. It will not work. It will involve many civilian casualties and increase the resistance there. And if it destabilizes Pakistan, it's going to make Iraq look like a bonfire. So we have to not send those soldiers over, but deal with negotiation, as people like Ashraf Ghani and other very knowledgeable Americans of Afghani descent have detailed in a great fashion. It would be nice if the Sunday shows would have someone like Ashraf Ghani on, someone who actually knows what's going on over there.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Baldwin.
Right. The Constitution is very clear. Only Congress can declare war. I've said all over the country that when Chuck Baldwin was President of the United States, I would never send American forces to invade and occupy another country without a declaration of war from Congress first. I'm absolutely emphatic about that. We must get back to the rule of law, and the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. What we should have done is what Ron Paul suggested back in 2001 when he introduced his Bill of Marque and Reprisal, which is exactly what Thomas Jefferson did whenever confronted with the Barbary Pirates back during his administration. I believe if we would have done it that way and used whatever private or special operations forces were necessary to deal with these rogue terrorist states like Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden and so forth, I personally believe that those people would have been either dead or captured, that the Al-Qaeda threat would be pretty much over, and over 4,000 of our best young men and women would not have died in the sands of Iraq.
And how would you respond now, the fact that we have U.S. troops and, of course, a large mercenary force stationed in Iraq,
right,
and troops stationed in Afghanistan who are dying now at a faster rate than soldiers and Marines in Iraq? How would you deal as president with those two situations?
I've said throughout this campaign that I would issue a directive to bring our troops home from Iraq and Afghanistan as quickly and as safely and as securely as possible. Obviously, you do not extract that amount of personnel, military and civilian, from a combat theater overnight. You have to have a plan in place that will protect them as you withdraw. But I think it's critical that we withdraw as soon as safely possible. Think about this too, Chris. Not only are we bogged down in a sandbox over there and our people cannot maneuver and we're vulnerable, we have a growing threat from China moving into the Panama Canal region. We have saber rattling going on with Russia. We have some very serious threats outside of Iraq and Iran. And what we're doing is reducing our overall military at the same time. When Ronald Reagan left office, we had over 600 ships in our Navy. Now we have a little over 200. So while we have been focused on what's going on in Iraq and the Middle East, we're losing sight of the overall picture. I really believe that we need to build our Navy and bring our military strength back to what it was when Ronald Reagan left office. At the same time, we cannot tolerate using the rubric of we are having a war on terror to pass things like the Patriot Act, which attack the civil liberties of
that's
the
the next
American
question.
people.
So we'll go to that.
Okay.